excellence, home responsibility, emotion. What if your child didn't just pass exams, but became the leader Ghana is waiting for? Alpha Kids Mentorship is a 12-month transformation where your child masters 5 pillars: leadership, academic excellence, home responsibility, emotional wellness, and career readiness. Every Sunday, experts guide them in small groups online. Monday through Friday, you, the parent, become your child's coach with simple 30-minute activities we provide. No stress, no guesswork, just connection and growth. Your child gets books, materials, recognition, and a community of families pursuing excellence together. While other children waste hours on screens, your child is being shaped into someone extraordinary. We started with 50 children. By popular demand, we've expanded to 100. 50 more spots just opened, but only those who enroll by November 30th get the early investment rate of 2,000 Ghana cedis. After that, it goes back to the original price, 3,000 Ghana cedis. Your parenting stress? Reduced. Your child becomes more responsible and independent. You get valuable progress reports, 12 life-changing monthly books, an exclusive Alpha Kids t-shirt, weekly Zoom workshops, community projects, leadership challenges, exciting monthly events, and a prestigious year-end awards ceremony. All for just 2,000 cedis, down from 3,000. Secure your child's slots now with just 100 cedis. Pay the rest by November 30th. This is your moment. Call or send a message to 053451 5541. 053451 5541. Limited to 50 kids, age 5 to 16. First come, first transformed. Your child deserves this head start. 50 slots? Act now. Alpha Kids Mentorship, where your child becomes unstoppable.
Heard about it during the maiden parents conference of the Peak Academy. At the end of the conference, after gaining so much knowledge on parenting, when the Peak Inner Tribe was introduced, I told myself that I would definitely want to be part of this. And so I was ready to do whatever it took to be part of it. And in fact, what was required to be part of it was just chicken change, because the experience in there is worth millions and millions and billions of cedis. I am not exaggerating. The Inner Tribe has been a blessing to me and to my family. It is a place where parents are urged on to raise and nurture responsible children who will grow up to transform generations. The Inner Tribe has coaches who are seasoned, well-seasoned coaches who have the patience, though they are so knowledgeable, they have the patience to groom every parent to become who God requires him or her to be. I got to know about the Inner Tribe, and I think it is a blessing that God gave to me, because I was facing challenges in parenting, and I'm one person who always looks out for the best for my children. I believe that the society becomes a better place when we have well-raised children to take up responsibility as adults. And so I have always wanted a safe place to receive safe and sound direction on how to raise children. And I tell you, the Inner Tribe is the place for that. There are daily connection activities. There are weekly seminars. There are activities to do. We read books that pertains to so many aspects of parenting and a whole lot. It is a place that you cannot be and then be a passive parent. My life has changed simply because I became a triber, and I will not trade that for anything. Any opportunity I have to enroll again as a triber, I will be the first to be there, because the experience there is life-changing. I urge every parent here to enroll as an Inner Tribe member, to receive sound direction, to be helped, to be supported. We have coaches who go all out. They are readily available to help us tackle any problem we face as parents. We are not only trained in the area of child upbringing, but even as parents, we are also trained to imbibe discipline, to focus on our parenting journey, financial prudence, every other aspect that is required to be the parents that you are expected to be. It is taught in the inner tribe. We are not done yet, but the way things are going in there, it even shapes you as a wife, as a career woman, as a manager, wherever you are. As you enroll in the inner tribe, you realize that you receive wisdom, you receive tutelage to enable you perform better in any area of your life. In less than 1 year of enrolling in the inner tribe, the transformation I see in my children and even in myself is tremendous. It is incredible. I realize that my children now follow the routines that we have set together as a family. My parenting journey has become much easier. And then I have now come to agree that, in fact, a lot of the things we go through as parents is simply because we ourselves are not ready. We are not trained for the parenting journey, and we only vent our anger on the children. And so, kind courtesy the inner tribe, my home is now a no caning, no spanking, no yelling zone. And meanwhile, everything works as planned. We did not get there in a day. We had daily connection activities that, in my estimation, I do not know where we're heading towards with those connection activities. But as they all came together, I now came to understand the saying of our coaches always, that once you are well connected to your child, whatever you say, whatever you ask them to do, they do it with ease. It is very true. The experience in the inner tribe cannot be talked about in a few minutes. You need to experience it to understand what we are talking about. It is a place to be. I would urge every parent, no matter the sacrifice it will take to be part of this inner tribe, if only you want to raise generational giants, if you want to raise well-rounded children who are equipped in every aspect of their lives, children who can take up responsibility, children who change the status quo, then I urge you to enroll as an inner triber, and I bet you your life will never be the same.
What if your child didn't just pass exams, but became the leader Ghana is waiting for? Alpha Kids Mentorship is a 12-month transformation where your child masters 5 pillars: leadership, academic excellence, home responsibility, emotional wellness, and career readiness. Every Sunday, experts guide them in small groups online. Monday through Friday, you, the parent, become your child's coach with simple 30-minute activities we provide. No stress, no guesswork, just connection and growth. Your child gets books, materials, recognition, and a community of families pursuing excellence together. While other children waste hours on screens, your child is being shaped into someone extraordinary. We started with 50 children. By popular demand, we've expanded to 100. 50 more spots just opened, but only those who enroll by November 30th get the early investment rate of $2,000.
Hello, everyone. I welcome you to the second session for our third day on our conference. I welcome all of you. How has the sessions been so far? The first session, I believe we learned a lot. And this is the second session. We are going to talk about parenting with patience, supporting children who learn differently. That is what we are going to talk about. And without talking much, let me play the bio of our speaker.
Tech enthusiast. She's the visionary founder of Autism Renewed, an online consulting practice dedicated to coaching parents on how to help their children overcome speech delay and other developmental challenges. She's also the host of the Autism Renewed Conference, an annual gathering designed to educate and empower parents and the public with actionable strategies to support children with developmental delays. With extensive knowledge in language development, nutrition, and behavioral management, Dr. Lola is a passionate advocate for joyful learning. She specializes in helping parents transform their homes into vibrant environments that foster both learning and fun. A firm believer in parenting empowerment, Dr. Lola champions the idea that an informed and equipped parent gives their child a parenting advantage, one that makes all the difference in navigating life's challenges and triumphing over them. As a self-mastery coach, she leads individuals through transformational journeys, helping them understand the seasons of life, breaking limiting beliefs, unlock their full potential, and embrace limitless possibilities. In addition, Dr. Lola's passion for technology has led her to teach professionals how to transition into the tech industry, access remote job opportunities, and thrive by leveraging their existing skills and experiences. Dr. Lola is also a prolific author of several impactful books and a sought-after speaker, having been privileged to speak on numerous platforms, webinars, and conferences across the globe. Her lifelong mission is to live a life of fulfillment, not just survival, and to help others do the same. Connect with Dr. Lola on her website www.autismrenewed.com. On Instagram, her handle is @autismrenewed. On Facebook, Dr. Lola Okeowo. YouTube, Autism Renewed by Dr. Lola. And LinkedIn, Dr. Lola Okeowo. Big parents, ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, let's welcome Dr. Lola Okeowo to the stage.
Hello, Doc. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. It's still muted. No.
Muted.
Yes, we can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, you can just communicate with me in the private chat if you cannot hear me. Then how many minutes do I have?
You
so
have
that I know how to run.
40 minutes.
40 minutes, okay. Yeah. I'll try. So you can communicate with me in the private chat if there's anything. Hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening. It's evening here live in Australia. And thank you. Let me share my slide. All right, it's so good to be here. I want to appreciate the organizers of this conference for the privilege. I hope I can add my slides to the stream. And the privilege and platform to be here. I want to appreciate Coach Aqua and her team. Thank you so much. Well done to all the speakers. But of course, apparently I've not listened to the previous speakers because usually I don't like to be biased when I have a topic. So sometimes I try to avoid listening to speakers before me so that somehow it doesn't influence the message that God has for me. So maybe after my session, then I'll go back to this. I mean, I've been tempted to listen, but like I'm not going to listen. So I don't want whatever they say to influence whatever I have to say, because I just like to come with the mind and the heart that God would have me speak. So thank you, everyone. So today, my topic is parenting with patience and perspective, supporting children who learn differently. I'm going to try so much. I have so much to say on this topic. In fact, I have a course coming up very soon that has to do with learning difficulties and challenges. So when it comes to this topic, my God, 40 minutes is not even, we're not even scratching it. I'll try as much as possible to put so much, and let's see how we go today. Okay, you've heard a little bit about me. I won't go into details. As a way of introduction, many parents discover their children learn differently only when struggles emerge, such as poor grades, slow reading, difficulty writing, or behavioral concerns. But learning differently is not a defect. It is simply a different pathway to acquiring skills and acquiring knowledge. With the right perspective, you can raise confident, capable children who thrive academically and in life. So the truth is that when I discovered that when it comes to children who learn differently, apart from children maybe who were diagnosed with maybe a disability before they got to school age. So for those kinds of children, maybe children who have a history of prematurity, or during their birth or pregnancy, certain conditions were discovered that can eventually cause learning challenges. So such children, when they are getting to school, most times the teachers already expect that they're likely to have some challenges, or the parents would have been told. So those kinds of children, it may be expected that they would learn differently. So learning differently means that the methodology in which children will acquire knowledge or learn certain things will be different, or build skills. So that's why children who often have maybe a disability or a condition, they learn differently, because due to that disability or that condition, it can impact on their ability to acquire the normal developmental milestones, or for them to progress normally. Hence, it will impact on the ability to build skills that they will now require in learning. So most times, except a child has a background condition that the teachers are already expecting that, okay, this child may learn in a peculiar way. Oftentimes, parents do not discover that their child learns differently until they get to school. So let's go as we build on this concept. So I'm laying this foundation so that we understand where I'm coming from. Okay? Because learning differently is not just for a child who has a disability, or a child who has been diagnosed with a certain medical condition. That is not that. I'm hoping today, we'll shift our perspective and we'll have a broader understanding and awareness. Your ability to parent with patience, perspective, and the future in mind determines how far your child can go. So this presentation will equip you with practical strategies, compassionate understanding, and actionable guidance to support your child's unique learning journey. So let's try to understand the journey ahead. Okay, in understanding the journey ahead, we'll look at redefining learning differences, identifying your child's style of learning, building essential skills, creating supportive environment, and partnering for success. So these are some of the concepts that we're examining today. Okay, we'll try to understand the spectrum of how children learn, the practical observation and assessment techniques that used to understand how your child learns, and if they really learn differently compared to the larger part of the population. We're going to talk about targeted strategies for common challenges that children who learn differently often experience. Then we're going to talk about the importance of the environment of a child in nurturing learning. Then we'll talk about how you can partner with educators and the right professionals. So let's redefine learning, what it means to learn differently. Most people assume that learning differently means a child having a diagnosis. So they will say, okay, a child who maybe has been diagnosed with autism or ADHD, oh, the way they learn is different. So you hear people say, okay, it's not a disability, it's a different ability, they are wired differently and things like that. Those are terminologies people often use. But the truth is that it's much broader and much hopeful. So children learn differently for various reasons. And understanding these distinctions will empower you as a parent to provide the exact support that your child needs. And to even break this table, personally think that the idea of a child learning differently, so we all learn differently. So what does it really mean when you say a child is learning differently? But I understand where the concept is coming from, meaning that a larger part of the population probably learn in a certain way, while some certain people do not learn the way the larger part of the population differently. But the truth is that we all learn differently. So why do we often put a concept to say some people are learning differently? Because if I learn differently from you, so that means we all learn differently. But let's just put it this way, that okay, a larger part of the population may be learning in a certain way. Well, some children or some individuals will not learn like the larger part of the population. Just like when we talk about handedness, we talk about left-handed, people that are left-handed or people that are right-handed. Oftentimes, we will call someone who is left-handed a lefty, and we will tell someone who is left-handed, having like a learning difference. But the truth is that, why are you calling someone who is left-handed a lefty? Do you call the person that is right-handed a righty? So you see that you use your left as your predominant hand. I use my right as predominant hand. It's a lot of differences. Why does one have to be categorized in a certain way? Of course, like I'm trying to explain now, maybe we'll think about it that people who are left-handed, they're just about 10% of the population. So maybe, okay, these few people, their hand preference or the predominant hand is left compared to right. But most times, if we break this concept, we'll understand that we're all different. So, most times when we put labels, on children, it's not really a good idea. And why I say this is this. Because I know the concept of when parents are thinking the child learns differently is because they have maybe one challenge, one disability. And that's why some children are often missed when they have challenge. Because my own concept of learning differently is not even just academics. We will see as we go on. Because learning is not just academics. Learning is equipping for life. So if a child is now doing well academically, getting A's, and doing well in school, we assume that the child doesn't have a learning difference. But that's not true. Because when it comes to other aspects of life, maybe at home, for example, the child being coordinated, being able to take instruction, being able to lead himself, home management, chores, that child may struggle with taking instruction. That child may struggle with learning those skills. That is the learning difference. Or the child learns those things in a certain way. So that kind of child now would often be missed as a child who we now need to look into the different way he's going to learn home management skills or acquiring certain skills that are not academic. You see where I'm coming from now. So that's why I always like parents to have a good understanding and not just classify children or label them in certain ways, such that if your child is not fitting into that box, you assume the child doesn't have a challenge. Meanwhile, if learning is equipping for life and we don't balance it, you see quite a number of adults who are very intelligent, who are very academic, but you see them in other areas of life. Some of them, maybe they're mathematical, they're computer gurus, but you find out that in some aspects of their life, emotional intelligence may be lacking. They may have very poor social skills, but you say, oh, my husband is a bookworm. He's just always working, he's a workaholic. But maybe your husband is even very poor in home management, very poor in emotional intelligence, very poor in social skills or connection. Okay, because he learns those things differently. But when he was growing up, nobody took time to build those skills. So let's go. So children learn, okay, I talk about learning differences are not deficits. They are simply variations in how the brain processes and acquires information. So when we shift our perspective from what's wrong with my child or what's wrong with this child to how does this child learn best, we're able to unlock tremendous potentials. So let's examine different categories of learning differences. That means when we talk about children learning differently, remember I talked about it's not just disabilities, because most often times we'll say, okay, child learns differently because they have a neurological condition or maybe neurodiversity, their brain is wired differently. I think that is just even a shallow perspective if we look at it, So we talk about things like dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and people just assume that children who have these challenges are the only ones, or ADHD, autism, or any form of neurodevelopmental condition or neurodiversity. We assume they're the only ones that learn differently. But I share a different perspective, because learning differently can mean different things. It can mean that the natural variation in how what do you call it? How children acquire information may be different. So, for example, if you look at brain dominance, things like left, we have people that are right brain dominant, left brain dominant. We'll get into that later because we have what we call right brain learners and left brain learners. Okay, so if someone is a right brain learner, there are some things that there's some methodology in which you need to teach them, particularly things like reading. Okay, compared to a left brain learner. So sometimes you have a child that is having challenges reading. Okay, at this age, 7, 10, the child is not reading. The challenge might not even be with their eyes. It might not be with anything. It might just be that the methodology, you are using to teach that child. If the child is a right brain learner and you're using the left brain learner method for that child, the child may struggle. We'll get into that later. Things like sensory preferences, things like processing speed, we need to consider that. Also, we could have learning hindrances, meaning that there may be certain things that can hinder a child's ability to learn. As simple as the environment of the child, the physical, they can form physical barriers of a child. If a child is in a home that is a toxic environment, where there is no love, yelling, shouting, hitting, mom and dad are fighting, there's tension. This can affect the emotional system of the child. It can trigger the nervous system of the child. When we talk about the flight or flight response, it's the sympathetic nervous system. Because for you to learn, you need to be how do you put it, well coordinated, well regulated. So if your children are going to school in the morning, you're shouting at them, you yell at them, that kind of child getting to school will not be in the right state to learn. So the environment of a child matters. Things like screen exposure, because screen rewires the brain. So that can be a learning hindrance. So nowadays we have what we call screen autism or virtual autism, meaning that we have children who develop the symptoms that you see in children. That categorize autism, speech and language delay, social skills issue, behavioral issues, all those things. These children have these things because of excessive screen exposure, and that's because screen rewires the brain. So such children now, if they are having challenges learning, it means that there was a hindrance. Something came in to disrupt the normal process of learning. And remember that I talked about when it comes to learning, we're talking about having certain skills or progressing in their normal development to acquire skills they will use to learn. So if anything or tampers with that process of normal development, it means that thing would hinder the process of acquiring skills that they would later need to learn. So a child that's been exposed to excessive screen, the child will have issues with hyperactivity, focus, concentration, and these are skills a child needs to learn. So that kind of child now will be having challenges, a learning hindrance because of the learning hindrance. Okay, even medical conditions can be a hindrance. Some children will have epilepsy and other medical conditions that could impact on their ability to learn. Then we'll now talk about the learning disabilities, like I mentioned before. So oftentimes, most are learning difficulties. They will come in. They often manifest like difficulty in reading. The child is a slow learner. The child is not getting this and things like that. They could manifest like that. Okay, so the natural learning variation. So we have different learning variations. When we know this, then we understand that, okay, people who have this kind of variation, they learn in certain ways. Okay, and that's the concept of a child learns differently. This child learns differently because when it comes to brain dominance, we have what we call right brain learners and left brain learners. The larger percentage of the population, are often left brain learners. And oftentimes, most of our school system often use the left brain method because, the thing with school is that, unfortunately, most schools are not able to individualize children. So you always have maybe one methodology, one curriculum, one textbook. But sometimes some children, that method or that curriculum may not be a good fit for them because they learn in a different way. Do you understand? So for children, for example, who are right brain learners, these are children who often think in pictures. They think more of whole concepts. Okay, so they are very visual, they're very creative. While children who are predominantly left brain learners, they prefer things like structure, sequence, they excel in things like, maybe linear learning, mathematics, and things like that. So what this means is that children who are right brain learners, things like reading sometimes can be challenging for them, because the foundation of reading, most times when you're teaching phonics and all your CVCs and things like that, if you don't build those foundational concepts using things like pictures, things like colors, those kinds of children will struggle. Sorry, unfortunately, I have a sample. Maybe if somebody asks a question, I can show you what I mean, because I have some samples around me. So for example, you're teaching ABCs or your sounds. Imagine you're teaching A. You now have a flashcard that has maybe an apple that is very colored. If you teach a right brain learner like that, what does that child do? The child is able to look at the sound, the alphabet, and the picture that is colorful. And what do they do? They stamp it as a memory. So the next time the child wants to recall the information, what do they think about? They remember the picture. Remember maybe those days in school when you were learning and you wanted to learn certain things, maybe in school, and you learned maybe a diagram or a table, and that's how you stamped that information in your brain. When you get into the exam hall and you have a particular question in that area, what do? Automatically? Just picture in your head. Just picture that table and you just try to now start remembering. So right brain learners more often times are like that. They learn in pictures, they learn in information in whole. So they do well even with whole words rather than single words. Most right brain learners, when it comes to even reading, they do well with teaching them reading with whole words, not just phonics. Of course, nowadays phonics is very popular, but phonics is not the only method or foundation of reading. Okay, of course, you can still combine it with phonics, but they also do well with whole words. That's why you see some children who are so young, they're able to learn whole words, and you just wonder that how is this child able to remember some of these things? Because they have more like a photographic memory. So they kind of like, they stamp that information. That's why oftentimes quite a number of children diagnosed with autism are right brain learners. So that's why most of them will struggle, reading can be very difficult for them, because if you're teaching them reading the normal way, especially because maybe most of them will have delayed speech and ability to express themselves. So most times you assume that they don't really understand because they can't really express themselves. So you now stay on the say cat. Meanwhile, those children, they just switch off. But when you teach them like with whole words, with pictures, with flashcards, things like that, very visual and things like that, they're able to stamp that information into their brain, recall it when they need it, and use it. So things like sensory processing as well. Okay, we have people who are visual learners, auditory learners, kinesthetic learners. So all these forms of learning, for example, a lot of children who have ADHD, even diagnosed with autism, they may be kinesthetic learners. For example, some children are kinesthetic learners, and you may think that they have ADHD because kinesthetic learners, sometimes they can be restless. They have they can't stay long hours without breaks. They need a lot of breaks. Sometimes they can sit down and they be fidgeting. Sometimes they need something to just play with. They are not the children who will sit still and they are reading. No, they can be shaky and be doing different things, but they are still reading and they are still learning. They also like manipulatives, like more of project-based learning. You're teaching them mathematics instead of just writing and writing. You bring all your counting cubes, you bring your abacus, you bring all those things. That is their own way of learning. So that kind of child, if you don't have that understanding, that's the different way the child learns, and you're trying to use the common method. Most schools use auditory. Some try to incorporate visual, but most times auditory. So imagine a child that is learning differently with another style of learning. That child is going to struggle. And that's why I said that sometimes parents may not even know how their child learns until the child starts struggling in school, and we start drilling down. And I start wondering, okay, why is this child not doing well in school? Why is this happening? Then they begin to learn that, this child learns differently if they get the right support. Okay. Okay, some children may even need more time. Sometimes some children that we call slow learners, or they have a certain disability or something. Sometimes they just need more time, because the way children learn is this: the stimulation first. Anything a child is going to learn, stimulation means that you're going to have a lot of exposure to it. Then after a while, they begin to consolidate before true learning takes place. So when true learning takes place, most times when you are seeing it, but oftentimes it's not when you are seeing it. That's not when the learning is taking place. So that's why sometimes some children need more time. But unfortunately, school system, how does it work? You are in year 1, next year you have to move to year 2. that child may need more time to consolidate what is being taught. But unfortunately, if they have to move the child to year 2 and you build on that foundation that was not solid, what happens? The child starts struggling. So, of course, environmental hindrances, like I mentioned, okay, these are things that could affect learning: screen exposure, chaotic home environment, and even physical health barriers, poor sleep. So what I'm mentioning this as a learning difference is this: if a child, will struggle to learn because of a chaotic home environment, it is a learning difference, meaning that this child learns differently. This child needs calmness. This child needs a home environment that is supportive. You see what I'm talking about? That learning difference is not just a diagnosis or a medical condition. So that's why, as a parent, it's important to understand your child and their own difference when it comes to learning. I hope you understand what I mean. Their own difference. We're talking about children who learn differently, and I've laid the foundation. I believe that everybody learns differently, because the goal of parenting and supporting your child is to individualize your child and help your child to be the best they can be. So you need to understand how your child learns, because your child is not only going to learn academics. Your child is going to learn skills at home, chores and things for life, because learning is equipping for life. Learning is beyond academics. Learning is beyond school. And remember, at one point in your life, schooling is going to stop. You do your master, do your PhD, schooling will stop, but education does not stop. So when you want to build understanding of how a child learns, their own difference, their own uniqueness in how they learn, because you also want to prepare them for life, such that even as adults, they understand certain things that they learn. So for example, me now, in some areas, I know that there are some ways that I learn and there are some ways that I don't learn. If I want to learn certain things now and I want to enroll for maybe a course or something, there are things that I look at that I know that with this format, it won't suit my way of learning. That is the learning difference for me. Oh, this format will suit my way of learning. Do you understand? So when I'm talking about learning difference, like, think about your child, that difference, that uniqueness, okay? Although that difference can come from maybe a disability or a condition, yes, but or there's some other areas. I want you to think beyond that, okay? Think about like that physical health as well. Some children need enough rest, enough sleep for them to be able to learn. That is a difference, is a learning difference unique to them. Such children, when they come back from school, they are not the children that you will say that if you don't do your homework, you will not eat. If you don't do your homework, you can't go and sleep. If you don't do your homework, you can't go and play. Those are not the kinds of children, because you know that for those kind of children, if they don't have a very sound sleep, they tend to be cranky. They tend to be, they could have behavioral issues, because I work with children with special needs, autism, and developmental delays. Last week now, I had a course on behavioral challenges. And one of the things I was sharing with the parents was that sometimes behavioral challenges can stem from poor sleep. If a child is not well getting adequate sleep, they could be having behavioral issues as well, because their nervous system is not well regulated. You understand that kind of, even nutrition. I mentioned nutrition here. Why? Because nutritional deficiencies also can impact on cognitive ability, can impact on memory, can impact on that child's ability to learn. That is the learning difference. I hope you understand that, those kind of things. Even sensory impairment, sensory impairment, they can also be, impact on a child's ability to learn. Of course, it may not be everybody. Remember, it may not be everybody that this is impacting on. It may not be everybody that poor sleep may impact on. It may affect all of us one way or the other, but it may not significantly impact all of us in our ability to learn or engage. But for some children, it may impact them. So that's why, this topic is saying that parenting with patience and perspective, it's very important. You must always parent with the right perspective. And the perspective is that learning for my child is equipping my child for life. And that's why I mentioned the importance of parenting with the future in mind. All right. When you are parenting with the future in mind, you're putting your child into education. You are individualizing your child, and you are helping them to understand how they learn for life, how they build skills, how they acquire information. Okay. So there's a critical distinction between difficulty and disability. So a learning difficulty is not necessarily a disability. Okay, learning difficulty means that a child is having difficulty learning. Of course, learning disability as well can cause learning difficulty. How do I mean? If a child has autism, for example, some of the let me distinguish. Okay, let me just say many difficulties parents observe, such as maybe poor grades, slow reading, trouble following instructions. They can be caused by natural variation or environmental hindrances, not necessarily neurological pathways. Okay, so of course neurological pathways can also cause it, but what I mean is that it's not cast in stone. So a diagnosis is not always the primary issue. Okay, so the issue is you need to identify the specific skill gap, and you provide targeted support. You provide targeted support for that skill. What I mean is this: I'm not saying that children who have maybe autism or ADHD, they don't have certain the neurological makeup or neurodiversity or maybe challenges they have is not impacting learning. What I mean is this: the challenge is you can't how do you call it? You don't equate the diagnosis to to reason for the challenge. How do I mean? You hear people say things like a child is not reading because the child has autism. That's a wrong statement. Or a child is not reading or struggling, the child is struggling to learn because the child has ADHD. That is wrong. The right thing is this: the child is diagnosed with autism, yes. There are certain challenges that they often have, or certain things we may see in children who have autism that can impact on their ability to learn, that can impact on their ability to read. Things like some children with autism have challenges with their eyes. And when I mean their eyes, I'm not talking about short-sightedness or long-sightedness. I'm talking about functional eye disorders. Things like eye tracking. Eye tracking is, when you're reading a book, the way your eyes are able to track. So there's a way your eyes are supposed to track. Some children with autism have that challenge. Some have what we call convergence issue. Convergence issue means that the way your eyes work together to converge when you are reading, those are visual skills that you will need in order to be able to read. So some children with autism may have that challenge. So when you're saying that child has a challenge reading, don't say the diagnosis is why they have. Because why this is important is this: you can't help a child from the point of a diagnosis. Let me say that again. You cannot help a child from the point of a diagnosis or even the point of a symptom. You need to find out what the underlying issue is. That's how you can help a child. And that's why you can have 3 children, 4 children who have the same diagnosis, but the challenges they may be having will be different. Even when we have children who have speech delay is not speech delay because we have different aspects. Some people have more predominantly receptive language disorder, expressive language disorder. Some children may have more processing speed. There's so many things. Some children have, it could be muscular function. It could be, there's so many things. So you can't now say, okay, the child has speech delay, that's why they're not doing it. That's not right. Because what that does is that most times it just closes the gap of us being able to look at the child holistically, drill down, and be able to support the child effectively. But once we are able to always take away the label of a diagnosis, okay, or a disability, and look at, okay, in terms of what exactly is preventing this child. Okay, if the child is struggling with focus and concentration, what is the issue? Is sometimes children have nutritional deficiencies that could be making them restless and have behavior issues. As simple as constipation. Do you know that constipation or headache can affect a child, can cause behavior issues, and affect a child's ability to learn? So you need to find out what exactly. Does the child have a sensory issue? Some children have a sensory what do you call it? Maybe the environment is hyper-stimulating because there's a way the environment should be curated to support the child's learning. So when you think about the difficulty the child is having beyond the disability or the diagnosis, it helps you. So I said this decision frees parents from unnecessary anxiety and focus your energy on what matters. So focusing your energy is drilling down where the challenge is. So that's why it's not enough for a teacher to tell you, oh, your child is not reading because they have a diagnosis. Oh, my child is not good in math. Those are just, once you just say that, you have not really said anything. Do you understand? Because you have not drilled down where the issue is. The issue could be because of the challenge they have. And the issue will be more than that. It could be the methodology, you see. Because some children with autism, there's certain methodology, like this convergence issue that I mentioned, there's certain things you need to put in place. Of course, when it comes to the therapy intervention, the strategies to go about that, of course, there are also methodologies that you can use to begin to teach them, or some alternatives that I may mention later on. So let's talk about skill-based approach. So the old question is, what is wrong with my child? Now, You should be thinking now, what skill is missing and how can I help build it? So I talked about the child that could not read because of the convergence. Okay, so that convergence now is going to prevent their eyes for you to have the skills for those eyes to be able to read. So when you know that is what the issue is, then we can now begin to drill down. Is this something that has a medical underlying? Is this something that I now need a therapist? Is this something that, okay, a different methodology of teaching, a different curriculum, a different style could work to help the child? So I said, learning is not just about passing exams, because real learning is you take in information. Real learning is take information, you understand it, you are able to retain it over time, you are able to use it effectively in real life situation. Learning is fundamentally about skill acquisition, the progressive building of capacities that enable children to function and thrive. I've talked about learning is equipping for life. That is the base of learning. Okay, learning is not just to pass exams, and that's why we have children who can pass exams and we think that, okay, they are okay, nothing is wrong. Meanwhile, in some other areas, there could be deficits that we may not even see later on in life. I wanted to share this concept of understanding developmental age and chronological age. This is very important because oftentimes when there is when there's an imbalance between these two, it can impact on a child's ability to learn. And that's also a learning difference, because what that now means is that you now have to approach teaching that child in some peculiar ways, because when you understand there's a difference. So chronological age, of course, is the age by birth, the date the child is born. They are 7 years old because they were born 7 years ago. While developmental age is like the skill level the child currently demonstrates according to the age. Okay, of course, like I mentioned, I give an example here. I don't want to dwell on it. So what that means is just that we have different developmental milestones, every one of us, that we go through all through life. From when you're a baby to an adult, we have speech and language, cognition, emotional behavior, motor skills, which is the gross motor and fine motor. Fine motor, for example, is what helps you to write. So if a child has challenges with fine motor skills, most times they will have challenges with writing and all these milestones. So sometimes, age-wise, a child could be 7 years. And even when it comes to those milestones, sometimes they could even vary. Maybe in cognition, the child is 5, operating at a 5-year-old level. Chronologically, the child can be 7. But developmentally, they are operating at the skill level in terms of cognition, 5-year-old. In behavior and emotions control, they may be operating as a 3-year-old. That's why sometimes your 7-year-old or your 8-year-old is still doing some things. And you're saying, why are you acting like a 3-year-old? The child should have outgrown crying by now. Some things that my child is doing, they should have outgrown it. The truth is this: children do not outgrow anything. Let me say it again. Children don't outgrow things. What happens is that they build a higher skill that helps them to now move to a higher level of performance or operation. And you don't see those behavior or those previous lower level skills anymore. That's why when a baby is born, they cry for everything. Cry to eat, cry to bathe, cry for everything. But as a baby is growing older, what happens? They begin to build skills to communicate their wants and needs. They know how to walk and go to the toilet. It reduces crying. So that's why, regardless of your child's age, regardless whether they have a diagnosis, they have a disability or not, everything you see that you feel like this is not age appropriate, most of the time is a skill deficit. So what you should be thinking is that, what higher skill, what higher teaching or skill do I need to build in my child that would help them to begin to function at this level? So that's why when children even have a developmental mismatch, chronologically, they are one age, maybe because of a diagnosis. For example, some children with autism now that have language challenges, that means that the child is 7, but in terms of speech and language, maybe it's at the level of a 2-year-old. You can see that there's a mismatch. What therapy often does is look for that gap and look for the strategies to build those skills that will help the child begin to acquire language and move up. That's what therapy is really. Okay, so we have different skill domains. I mentioned cognitive. Cognitive is reasoning, comprehension. So if you look at all these skills now, children need these skills to learn. So some children who have certain challenges, in order for them to be able to learn, for you to be able to pass those information across to them, it's going to be different. That's what the learning difference also entails. Okay, so cognition, comprehension, and things like that. Language skill, ability to understand spoken language. That understanding language is receptive language. Expressive language is ability to say and communicate it. Motor skills, fine motor, to be able to write, things like that. Executive functioning skills. So these are skills that there are things like organization, working memory, cognitive flexibility. These are all skills that a child would need to learn. Not just education, remember. Learning is equipping for life, to learn a lot of things, because executive functioning skill helps you to function helps you in academics because things like focus, planning, time management, working memory, cognitive flexibility, you need it in school and academics. But in life generally, to be coordinated, to lead yourself, you need executive functioning skill. You understand? To impulse control. You understand? So we have a lot of adults who have emotional outbursts. Most of them, their impulse control is very poor. Their executive functioning skill is poor. So if you have poor time management or planning, like the executive functioning skill is poor. And even though you may not have a diagnosis, so you see, emotional regulation. So if a child can't be regulated, they will struggle to learn. Okay, so why do we now have these gaps, this mismatch? It could be developmental factors. You know, like I said, natural delay in maturation. It could also be teaching, the method you are using to teach the child. So that's what I'm trying to say, that, see, we need to consider if it's not just that a child has a disability, okay? Your child learning differently means that, okay, there's a way that, of course, developmental has to do maybe genetics, how their brain is wired, neurodiversity, all those ones are there. But teaching mismatch, we've talked about learning style. If your learning style is a learning different, this child learns differently in this way. So that means that you need to teach the child in the way they will learn for them to learn. Okay, so if you're using a methodology that does not align with the child's style of learning or their brain wiring, there's going to be a challenge. Environmental factors I talked about, because those ones can be a hindrance to that child's learning. So that is this, it's a learning difference, uniqueness to that child, because that child environment is very big for that child. It may be big for everybody. For some children, it may be a big factor. For example, children whose love language like now is words of affirmation. They are going to school in the morning, you speak the wrong word to them, their whole day could be spoiled, their whole week could be spoiled. It could tilt some children even into depression and anxiety. And they may not even be able to learn, they may not be able to read because they're so occupied. It affects them. Then we talk about methodology of curriculum methodology. I mentioned that most schools often use one curriculum style to read. But some children, they are learning differently. They learn differently because certain curriculum types may not work for the way they learn. I remember those days when I was in medical school. One of our courses, anatomy, then there used to be a particular textbook that was termed like the standard, and that's what everybody used to use. All the very brilliant gurus and all that, everybody will read that book. But you know what? Every time I picked that book, I was struggling. I couldn't understand it. And they would say, oh, this is the standard. If you don't read this one, you can never pass. And I struggled and struggled. They were like, okay, we go and pick the fourth edition, the previous edition. That one is even better. I picked all these editions. I could not read it. Meanwhile, there was another textbook, which was not like a standard for our curriculum. One of our lecturers used to use it, but that textbook, every time I read that book, I used to understand. And you know the difference? It's later I got to understand what the difference was. The one that was easy for me had colors. Had diagrams, and even the layout, well spaced and everything. So it was easy for me to take it in. That was my own learning difference. Meanwhile, the other one, everybody was shouting, no pictures, just black and white, boring, thrown together. I just struggled. I can't even put anything in my head. But this other one, as I read it, I put in my head, I can recall everything. But initially, I struggled because I was trying to fit into everybody. See what I'm talking about, methodology. That's a learning difference for me. Not just my learning style now. No, the curriculum delivery, curriculum style, methodology, even textbooks, they matter. Sometimes some children will do better with small tasks, but some, and if you are too fast, if it's too fast-paced, they will struggle. Even physical factors, things like I mentioned retained primitive reflexes, because retained primitive reflexes, I don't have time to go into it now. Anyway, they're childhood reflexes that will impact learning, okay? We have lots of them. Even writing, we have what we call palmar grasp. A baby, when you hold the baby's hand, the baby grabs your hand like this. But after a while, the baby lets go. That's the palmar grasp reflex. So some children, the reflexes don't go completely, and it can impact on your child's ability to write. Reading and writing as well, we have some other primitive reflexes as well that could impact learning and cause behavior issues and things like that. I don't have time to go into it, but what I'm trying to say is that some of those things can impact. So if a child has those things, there's the way we teach or strategy we put in place while we're fixing those things. So, I'm mentioning that, remember, that a learning difference, I didn't just come from a diagnosis. What is unique to the child? Curriculum delivery, methodologies of teaching. Things like mathematics now, some children do better with manipulatives. But these days, most maths curriculum just used, 1 + 2 is always on paper equals to 3. Some children will struggle. I remember I think I was teaching my son or my daughter, I was teaching them mathematics, and I saw inside the textbook, there are different methodologies of teaching a particular concept, addition. So some places they use this box method, this cube method, where you shade the lines and add there and shade it. Another place they'll put objects, 5 balls here plus 2 balls here equals to this. Another place they'll use different methodologies. But I realized that, there's some of them that were easier for my daughter than the others. Also, I discovered that when I brought out manipulatives, the counting cubes, that was not in the textbook, but using my own discretion because I understand how my children learn, I realized that was working better. So if in a school system, that is a learning difference for that child. Not all schools use abacus again these days. Not all schools use manipulatives anymore. Not all schools use, maybe some children in that class are visual learners. Some are kinesthetic, some are auditory. A teacher should be able to adapt to teaching the same thing in different ways. Even you as a parent at home, you want to give instructions. If you have a child that is a visual learner, don't just go out and give instructions. You should be able to, have maybe a notice board, draft things, draw things, and different things like that. So what are some practical skill building strategies? Read aloud sessions, okay? This would help in building vocabulary, comprehension. So like I mentioned, some children have maybe a certain delay, certain disability, that is impacting on their natural ability to acquire cognitive skills. So you can now begin to help them, build, use comprehension, So you use all these other methods, remember, to build the skills that will now enhance their learning. Okay, this is how this is the learning difference. They need these kinds of stimulation because natural way of acquiring this learning does not work easily for them. What others will just acquire easily, they don't. So you now need to use these strategies to build those underlying skills that will make learning easy for them. That's a difference for them. So you do read aloud, things like games. Well, fine, this will work for all children, but some children particularly will need it more than other children. Things like chess, board games, puzzles, they will build their cognitive flexibility. They will build their strategic thinking, problem solving, and these are all skills a child will need in maths, okay? Even chores, cooking, cleaning, this helps to build executive functioning skills that can help a child. Play, outdoor play. Let me say it again. Play. I know parents don't like hearing it. Play is a wonderful tool I use to build skills. Play is not just a passive. Unfortunately, most times parents may not know how to use play. So you hear things like my child plays too much. If you don't finish your homework, you won't play. Even there are some schools that they don't even really have a playground. They have limited, play time. Play is the work of a child. Play builds cognitive ability, builds brain. But you need to know how to use play as a tool, to build some of these skills. So play can be a tool to help a child learn. You understand? There are even certain things that you may even take away the textbook. Teach through play, teach by life. I talk about fine motor, things like Play-Doh, threading, cutting, all these things, they should be normal life. In fact, from when a child is born, before they even go to school, if truly a parent has put some of these strategies in place as a way of life, you realize that even children who naturally maybe they are right brain learners and they learn differently in certain things, these activities would have helped to build their skill that will still make learning in general environments easier for them or easy to navigate, or a parent would have picked it early enough to know that their child learns differently. So how do you identify your child learning style? Let me say things very fast. You watch how they play, you notice their responses as well. So like now, from when the child is at home, especially when they are younger, when you give instructions, how do they respond? When you give verbal commands, when you are interacting with them during play, do you notice that, when you do things that are more hands-on, they respond better, they retain is better, okay? Things like building blocks, running around, do they enjoy those kind of activities more? Then you track, how do they recall things? For example, maybe if your child listens to something, maybe a radio or a music somewhere, and you get back home and your child can easily recall it so well. They are auditory learners. Their auditory may be good. So once you choose, that's why as a parent, you need to be present. You need to be intentional. When your child is born, from where they are born, unfortunately, not all of us started early. Okay, the same time, just give me like few minutes, so you need to be intentional. That's why I said that from the beginning you should have built this thing. But if you didn't build it, you can start being intentional. You are intentional, you are looking out for it, and you are creating opportunities through play, through toys, through activities. I'm almost done. So the learning styles, I've talked about the audio distribution, I mentioned it a lot. I talked about right and left brain learners. I already mentioned it. I think I mentioned it. So right brain learners do more well with pictures. When you want to teach them things like reading, you use pictures, you use flashcards, you use all those kind of things. It helps them to stamp it, like they have a photographic memory. Those kind of people too. You can use things like visuals, maybe videos, documentaries, things like that. Of course, be wary of screen exposure. So but I mean, things are like what do you call it? Books, flashcards, all those kind of things you used to teach them. There are other things you consider. Handedness, for example, can be a learning difference. So if you change the handedness of a child, for example, it can affect the child. I have a story on that. I don't have time to share it. Okay, handedness is very important. It's a learning difference, but it's not a disability. Processing speed as well. So if a child has, maybe they are slow, what can you do? Playing games, card games. It helps to build cognitively. Even you can do spelling games at home or things like that, where you say something, you not get them to recall it. Even when you go out, one thing you can also do with processing speed, as you go out, you can say, what did you do today? Where did we go to this? Get them to recall things like that. Help to build their processing speed. Okay, sensory issues as well. This has to do with the sensory nervous system, and well, some children don't do well with excessive noise, excessive light, and all that. So when one method doesn't be flexible, okay, don't stick to one curriculum. As a parent, you should know your child. That helps to be able to advocate for your child. Okay. Practical reading strategies, like I talk about if a child is having challenges reading. Remember I said that most of the time learning differences are picked when a child is having challenges. Rule out visual problems, because visual problems is eye tracking and we need to fix it. Okay, if it's a hearing issue, we need to fix it. Are they right brain learners? I talk about right brain learners where we colors, whole words, then read aloud. Multisensory approach. You want to teach them to use different methods. You say it, you touch it, they hear it. Do different methods. It helps them. How do I put it? Then choose books maybe with larger prints, clearer pages, and things like that. So there's some specific challenges like dyslexia. Most children have dyslexia. They have problem with phonetic awareness. They turn their letters here and there and things like that. So there are specific curriculums. I listed some of them. I don't have time to go into that. Can help. What you can do at home is use colors to teach them things like tracing words in sand to practice and things like that. Color coding and things like that. Firstly, writing issues. Children who have writing issues, rule out the fact that handedness is not an issue. They didn't change the child's hand from left to right. I have clients who have teenagers who are struggling with reading and writing, and we have to go back to change their handedness, because handedness is a big deal. It disorganizes the brain. Okay, then check the muscles of the hand. Is it weak? There are exercises they need to do. Play doh, squeezing paper. Doing a lot of hand exercise, playing sand to strengthen the muscles. Okay. Also, you can adapt using some tools. Larger pencils. I don't have them here. They help better grips. Okay, so you get pencils that have a larger grip. Maybe during question time, if I have some, I can show you. They have a larger grip. They help children, with handwriting. Also consider the reflexes and things like that. Other thing you can do is introduce typing. Let me mention that. So don't be rigid. Like I said, some children may learn to write, communicate with typing before they start using their hand. So also, that a child is not writing, it doesn't mean they cannot read. That a child is not speaking, doesn't mean they cannot read. You don't need to speak before you read. You read with your eyes. So always don't limit a child. Give a lot of multiple opportunities. Expose the child. If a child cannot learn something, you can use documentaries. You can use live. You can learn geography by going to the museum, by going on excursions, by doing nature walks. Teach them like that. So I mentioned dysgraphia. Dysgraphia has to do with a lot of handwriting. So you need to check what handwriting. Is it the muscles of the hand that is the problem? Is it the reflexes that is the problem? So while you are adapting, you can get stencils. I have those things that I don't have. Stencils to practice, or start teaching other methods, typing, teaching them other things, teach them through videos, documentaries, live, and all those kind of things. So like maths, I mentioned manipulatives. So introduce maths with manipulatives, abacus, games, Uno, use all these things, then teach by life. Remember, anything, a child is not going to school. Like you and I now, what I use, like I tell people that the only thing I use maths for now is to count money. I don't need maths for anything. I said parents with the future in mind. So break away from the fact that, so if the child is not mastering something, what is the goal, that thing that you want them to learn? Teach it by life. Teach maths, we go to the shops, teach counting with fruits and shopping and cooking and things like that. Focus on attention. Oh my God, that's so many things. So create the right environment. I've mentioned all that before. The emotional environment, your environment must not be toxic. Then of course, I wanted to mention that that gifted children who we call gifted children are actually special needs. They learn differently, and it can be an issue. it can really be a big issue. So that's why I said, like, your child is doing well, your child is a math genius and all that. Don't even be skipping classes. What you should do is introduce them to other things, because most children are gifted. They are gifted in one area. They'll be very good academically, socially, emotionally, they may not really be good. So expose them to other things. Stretch them, stretch their creativity, get them to volunteer, get them to start a business, get them to do other things outside just academics. So remember, parent with the future in mind. So ask yourself, are you parenting for exam or you're parenting for adults? See, I mentioned all these things. They are the most important things that your child will need, because true success is preparing your child for life. Okay, so here is your action plan. So I want you to go back home today, observe intentionally, then audit your environment, whether you have excessive screen, ensure that you have the right materials in your hand, right books, toys, and the tools in your environment. Your environment will not be toxic. Love and support. Okay, then experiment with all the forms of learning style. Then partner with educators. Very important. Okay, it's very important you partner with your child's school and educators, and even the right professionals. If your child, I think I missed this. If your child needs help, maybe I've missed it. Okay, if you suspect anything, talk to the right professionals. Okay, then I wanted to mention, another thing you have to ensure is that a child may be struggling because the child is in the wrong school. So ensure that your child, I'm sure Coach Akpa will teach you how to pick the right school for your child. I mean, I'm sure she will have taught you in the academy. How your child, because your child, I have had clients that was the big change. The child was struggling. When they had consultation with me, I was able to identify that the school was wrong. They changed the school, and that was so. A good school may not be the right school. So that's why you must know your child as a parent. Get the right school. Understand how your child learns. When you're introducing your child to the teacher, you must know how your child learns. You must know what the curriculum looks like, the methodology you are using. Maths, for example, has two styles of teaching: the mastery style and the spiral style. I don't have time to teach. So most schools use the spiral method, and some children don't do well with that. So you need to know why your child is struggling, or so that's the learning difference, because the methodology may be wrong. Okay, so finally, every child is gifted and every child learns differently. So your role is not to force them into a mold, but to understand the child you have been given and to equip them with the skills, create the right environment, and support them. So remember, if a child does not learn the way you teach, then you have to teach the way the child learns. Thank you. I tried so much. Oh my God. Thank you, Coach Akpa.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. In fact, those 40 minutes is not enough to really go in detail with this kind of topic. So next year, we are actually going to have a detailed course on how to help your child learn. It's very important we understand all of these things. Thank you so much, Coach Omolola. We appreciate you. We honor you. We don't take your time for granted. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
Any question? I don't know if you have
any questions. Please, just 2 minutes. If you have any questions, kindly drop them in there. So someone is okay. What's a session? Rich. Thank you so much, Bethel. Thank you so much. I'm not seeing any questions. I think our time is also running. So
how can they reach me? I think just reach out to Coach Akpa. She'll give my details, and yeah.
Okay. Please join. Yes. Please join the Pick Parent Academy, and we teach all of these things in detail. We are going to go in detail next year. We are going to have a course on that. So stay tuned for all other information. Thank you so much, Coach. See you.
Thank you. Thank you for the privilege. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
All right, thank you so much. I believe this session has been very, very insightful. So we are moving on to the next session without wasting much time. See you, and don't go anywhere.
It goes back to the original price, 3,000 Ghana cedis. Your parenting stress? Reduced. Your child becomes more responsible and independent. You get valuable progress reports, 12 life-changing monthly books, an exclusive Alpha Kids t-shirt, weekly Zoom workshops, community projects, leadership challenges, exciting monthly events, and a prestigious year-end awards ceremony. All for just 2,000 cedis, down from 3,000. Secure your child's slots now with just 100 cedis. Pay the rest by November 30th. This is your moment. Call or send a message to 053451 5541. 053451 5541. Limited to 50